everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of ChatGBT. I am your host with the most, Professor Tom, here at Gracie Barra Tooting, and with me is Professor co-host.
Hello guys, this is Professor 𝗵𝗂, the co-host.
Professor 𝗵𝗂 is the co-host. Today we're talking about safeguarding and what it is, why it matters for us here at Gracie Barra Tooting, and how we put it into practice on and off the mat.
Yes, so due to the quality of the subject, we are going to mention some experiences of harm in sport, so we advise you to take care while you're listening, have some descriptions, and in case this subject makes you uncomfortable, you can skip this episode and go to the next one.
Yeah, but then when you feel better, you can come back and listen to it.
Yes.
Because it is a great topic and a really pertinent one that needs to be discussed. So let's start nice and simple. What do we mean by safeguarding?
Well, for us, it's the proactive process of protecting children and adults from abuse, neglect, exploitation, and harm. It's all about promoting their welfare, so this way they can develop safely and healthily, and enjoying the community that we have, making this space special and growing better and stronger.
Keeping people safe, helping them thrive through Jiu-Jitsu here at Gracie Barra Tooting. So it's incredibly important that as a topic it is understood, discussed, but also that we have the necessary safeguards in place to ensure that people can be kept safe and they can thrive through what we're doing here in the academy.
And why does safeguarding matter so much here, Tom?
Firstly, because it aligns with our values. So caring for children's and adults, vulnerable adults' development, their healthy development, is one of the best investments we can make for what we do in the academy. If we can help improve the lives of those individuals through Jiu-Jitsu in a safe and healthy way, they can go on to develop as little people, then as bigger juniors, and then as teens, and finally progress into adulthood in a way that will set them up to live their best life and make the right decisions and right choices and be much better people, much safer people.
And I also consider that, in practical terms, we have around 45% of our members as children, as underage people. So almost half of our community is made by children. And safety isn't optional, it's fundamental since we have so many of these underage people around us.
Yeah, keeping them safe is a priority. Jiu-Jitsu is a powerful tool for personal growth, and kids spend between 3 to 5 hours a week here on our mats with us. So that kind of makes our gym a social reference point, like school and any other sort of activities and institutions that they attend, where they learn language, behaviours, standards and skills and rules that we need to ensure we are keeping them safe and putting those rules in place so that they can thrive and be healthy and best versions of themselves and help society when they grow older and improve.
Yeah, that puts us in the position of having this clarity that everything that we do here matters because it becomes a model, a reference for them. So the culture that we set here has a very powerful impact on who they can achieve, who they can become and what they can achieve, as humans.
And if we do it the right way, which we do, that means that when they are in situations in other places that isn't the same, they can stop, call it out, and where parents as well are viewing that, they can themselves see that this place isn't healthy for their child and they can do something about it. So that little sound bite is that the violence I pretend not to see can end up turning against me. So if you are blind to what's happening in certain areas, certain situations, then eventually you'll become a product of that. It will cause you harm. You might not know it at the time, and your parents might not know it at the time, but further on down the line, it can be very detrimental to your personal growth.
Exactly, and if it's a context, an environment where it's unsafe for one person, and like there is some violence, some stuff going on, and nothing is done, like there is still impunity, no accountability. It's just a matter of time before this environment ends up being safe for everybody, for everyone.
Yeah.
So safeguarding, worrying about safeguarding, is a tool of protection for the whole community, you know?
Well, we might come on to this later on, but I think that the word that's been used there, violence, I think that probably needs a bit more explanation, so it's understanding, because a lot of people, maybe a lot of kids, will understand that to mean just physical. Like you get assaulted, pushed, kicked, punched, and that is violence, where in fact that is not all that violence is. It can be different kinds of physical, mental, verbal abuse, invasion of space boundaries for meanings of a negative way, and that is definitely very detrimental to your space, personal growth, safety, really. Here's how safeguarding shows up day to day at our gym.
So we had some policies put in place, and I'm going to talk about the first one, which is like the hiring and the training. So we run annual DBS checks for all the instructors and volunteers. The professors, the coaches, you know, all the instructions that we have, they go through the Gracie Barra certification program that's called ICP certification. And the leadership team, like me, Professor Thomas, and Sophia, we also go through other kinds of training that is related to safeguarding, like safeguarding itself, but also first aid, fire safety, health and safety, mental health courses. So we are constantly trying to keep ourselves up to date to what's the most like recent research, the recent protocols. So we make sure that we are gonna respond accordingly in case something happens.
Yeah. So the process gone through in order to bring any individual, whether it's off the mats or on the mats, is quite onerous. It's necessary for them to prove to us that they are safe through the external DBS checking arrangements. So that's a background check on them for their criminal record, if they have one. The ICP, which is the Gracie Barra certification process, which we need as coaches, professors here, but as other coaches, all our coaches are ICP qualified. That is a course that provides the certification, and necessary to complete that is the first aid training. So that's mandatory as far as the ICP is concerned, and an additional bar that we put there as well is to ensure that safeguarding and the training of safeguarding is undertaken by not just our coaches, but all our volunteers who want to be on the mats in and around the kids' activities, the kids' training, the kids' classes that happens here at Gracie Barra.
Yeah, I also think it's important to mention that like we have volunteers and coaches that they are at the beginning of their journey. So there are a lot of mistakes they are gonna end up committing, and they need some guidance to improve their actions to make sure that everybody's gonna be safe. And if at some point, like we are always giving feedbacks and like trying to teach and to share like better ways, healthier ways of doing things. But in case we see that there is someone that really is not being able to keep up to these standards, then we need to let them go.
Yes, of course, that's non-negotiable.
There's no
regardless,
no
regardless of how difficult a conversation that may be, it's necessary for the benefit of all and the safety of all that needs to happen. And this as well, from the coaches and volunteering side, this is a reference point for them as what best practice should be. We're not just going to have coaches here that just like train and teach here. They potentially will go elsewhere to other Gracie Barras and other maybe jiu-jitsu academies to provide their coaching knowledge and expertise, and we want them to see how well we do so that they know that that should be their best practice in that academy, and if it is not, then they have the opportunity to decide whether they continue on in that place or whether they try and make improvements to improve the safety of the individuals that are under their care in that academy as well. So by setting the bar so high here, we hope to raise the level up everywhere else. So I think that is incredibly important. The other policies that we have here is our code of conduct, how we're supposed to act when we're on the mats as well. Safeguarding the training that happens off the mats can be desk-based, can be classroom-based, but once you're on the mats, it's then important that you have a set of principles and protocols that you follow in order to keep those in your charge safe. And that's how you interact with the kids. That's how you can straightforwardly touch the kids, moving them around into positions and stuff, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, what you can do as a volunteer, what you can do as a coach, what a volunteer can do that a coach can't because of the training they've had, this sort of stuff. Also, videography and photography. Now, it's an ongoing challenge because people and parents very excited by the progress that their kids make. But unfortunately, their kids are not the individuals on the mats alone. They are with other kids as well. And sharing these images around social media, you have no idea, really, who is involved in viewing those images. So keeping everybody safe, make sure that no photographs, unless it's explicitly stated by the Academy, can be taken place. And even then, every picture that is taken for the Academy is for internal purposes only. We use them only for updates to parents on their kids' progress and updates to other adults as well on their progress.
Yeah. I feel like this topic right now regarding the image of people, has become a big thing because of social media.
Yeah.
So wait for it, but in the future we are also going to have another episode talking more about that and like how we as jiu-jitsu practitioners, how that kind of affects us, affects our practice and all. So luckily here at the gym we don't have no one like adults that are like trying to always be taking pictures and all, we can have an episode just explaining some nice conducts in terms of like if you want to take a picture after the class, or
what that means,
if you want to record yourself fighting someone, something for the near future.
Yeah. So in the days when I was first coming through Gracie Barra, it was very much you would add your name to your gi and children would add their names to their gis as well. And then it became, well, if a child's name is on a gi and it's the summertime and they walk outside in their gi, everybody has access to their name. And people who mean harm can then use that for their own ill-gotten gain to know that child's
name. Before approaching the kid or making some extra research about
So we scrap that here, that doesn't happen. And the same with the adults as well. Vulnerable adults in the same position. People who could potentially mean you harm would have access to your name, potentially second name as well. And that's just not acceptable in order to go align with our values of keeping you safe. That would not be keeping you safe. So like with the code of conduct, we have coaches and volunteers codes of conduct with clear roles and responsibilities for everybody to understand. And it's not just we tell you it and you just follow it or you don't. It's we tell you it, we guide you through it, and you accept it by signing it to say you've understood it. And therefore you're accountable and responsible for your actions on the mats. And like Professor Ghebbi said, should you be found to be not following the process and the conduct as necessary, then you will exit the mats, and under investigation you will exit the academy should necessary.
Yeah, and I think that like regarding these documents, they are accessible for everyone. So if you're listening right now and you would like to give a check on them, just let us know through the email or ask for us when you are around the gym, and we're gonna make sure to share those documents with you. I think it's very important that everybody reads it, because it's concerning to your safety.
Yeah. So we have lots of different things. The formal complaint form as well, which is here at the academy. That's available for anybody to make an anonymous complaint that will be investigated by the academy. Or should you feel that you need it to go higher, then we have access to the Independent Oversight Commission from Gracie Barra. They have posters, or we have posters for them on the females and males change room walls, which with a QR code you can scan to access a form where you can make the same sort of complaint that will be investigated higher up through Gracie Barra.
Yes, I also want to add that depending on what's the situation, if you rather just have a conversation with us in private and all explain what you're going through, we can try to help with a better solution, like in a more informal way. But then if you really want to make things more formal, you will have to fulfill the form,
Yeah.
And also depending on what happened and what you are complaining formally about, we will have to go through an investigation, and here at the gym, like, we are going to check the CCTV. We might talk to witnesses, and if necessary, we will have to escalate to the police.
Yes, yeah, of course.
If it's appropriate.
Yes. One of the things we try and do and working very hard consistently on is this open door policy of open communication. Now, in serious circumstances like this, yes, we are here to listen, and we do what we can do within the boundaries of what we're able to do for complaints. But it's also about keeping everybody safe when they're on the mats as well. So that includes when you're rolling, to have that open communication with your partner to keep yourself safe and keep them safe by trying to establish what kind of role you're looking for. It's all about respecting each other with that open comms, to saying what kind of thing you're looking for from your training, as well as, you know, what has just happened, that sort of situation, because it can vary from an extreme situation of abuse, bullying, neglect, to a role that's caused injury, potentially accidentally or on purpose, that we will need to investigate. And in order to improve what we do here, we need to know about these sorts of things so we can put in place safeguards to stop that happening in the future.
I think now it's important to start speaking about some data.
Yeah.
So we did the previous research, like, we didn't do the survey ourselves.
That was very time consuming.
Yeah. But we were like reading a lot these last days, some articles, you know, looking on the formal websites of the UK government about like safeguarding for children and this kind of stuff. And we found this research that has a survey was done across UK, Austria, Belgium, Germany, Romania, and Spain, with 10,302 adults.
Do you want to talk us through the findings from that survey, Professor?
Yes, with great pleasure. So we have, unfortunately, 75% of these adults, they experience at least one form of violence in sports as children. And then again, the same thing that we mentioned before, violence is not just something that is physically done to you, it also can have other aspects. So in this specific survey, they described violence as 5 main things. So violence, according to the survey, can be psychological, physical, neglect, non-contact sexual, or contact sexual. And here I'm going to explore with you like the percentage of people that has suffered some kind of violence and what's the prevalent one. So the one that happens the most was the psychological violence, with 65% of people declaring that they suffered from it. Then next to it we have the physical type of violence, 44% of the respondents. Then neglect, 37%. The next one is non-contact sexual, which could be like verbal harassment, you know, saying stuff that is appropriate to someone else, and it had like 35%. And the last one, which was a violence that configured sexual contact, it had 20%.
And it shouldn't be underestimated. This is from a survey of 10,000 people. So those are significant numbers.
And across different countries, so it just shows us that it's not something specifically to just one place, to just one country, you know.
So we have that ethnic minority children reported the highest rates, nearly 3/4, well, over 3/4, nearly 77%. And inside sport, 79% of men and 71% of women reported at least one experience of these forms of violence.
Here, I think it's very interesting for us to make our own assessment of the situation, because if you take sports at the moment, we know that there is a higher amount of men practicing compared to women, you know? So we can see that a lot of men reported violence. And then we have a smaller amount of women practicing. So here at the gym, if you look, for example, to the amount of female students and male students, yes, we have more male students.
It's about 1 in 10.
Exactly, and then less women. But the women that are in the sport, there's still a big rate of them being targeted by misconduct and like violence and poor behavior.
And really, it's probably prudent to state that the reason we're doing this podcast is because of the issues that are surrounding the wider jiu-jitsu sport at the moment, especially significantly in the States. But
yeah, and now like thinking a little bit more about like who is doing this violence against these children. You know, we have the like most of the people who were doing that were often the peers, like other children. But when we think about adults, among adults, we see that most of the violence was coming from instructors and coaches.
Yeah.
So that's very sad because coaches...
Very troubling.
Yeah.
That's why I'm proud of what we do here to ensure that does not happen and cannot happen, and that we have everybody under our charge is safe with what they do.
Something that I also think it's interesting to mention is the fact that like we grow up with hearing that like stereotypical phrase like stranger danger, you know?
Yeah.
But then when you see this research specifically, we have that only 6% of the adults like that were doing some sort of violence, they were not acquaintance, they were like unknown to the children. And on the other hand, the adults that were involved in this kind of violence, they represent 50% of the cases. When we think also about the peers, the children being violent to other children, we see that non-children, like non-perpetrators, were 37%, and the unknown perpetrators were 21%.
So that's potentially people within the same class, same school,
Yes.
slightly older individuals that they know. Yeah.
So stranger danger, I think it's still a good thing, but we need to educate ourselves and see that like it's more likely of you or your children to suffer some kind of violence from people that they actually know.
Yeah. The sort of prevalence of these numbers as well varies by level. So 68% report it in recreational sport, as against 84% among those who competed internationally. So that's a significant number in terms of what is able to, well, I suppose not get away with, but what is being reported, what happens when people go and compete internationally by those that are known to them.
Yes, so like violence is not as rare as we would like to see, and it's present inside the environment, you know. So culture, supervision, accountability, they are non-negotiables. Otherwise, violence just spreads like fire.
Exactly, and that's our position here at the Academy. It's non-negotiable to go through these levels, jump over these bars, go through these hoops in order to secure yourself a spot on the mats to volunteer and a spot on the mats to coach.
Yeah, so we have like these behaviors that we constantly motivate within our community, which are like if you see something that didn't feel right, you can always talk to us, you know, talk to me, Professor Thomas, or one of the people who are responsible for the class. You can ask for a safeguarding policy pack, and we are going to send it to you in case you want to review it. And you can also use the formal complaint. Again, we cannot tell you how important it is to also do formal complaints in case something is very, very serious.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have the formal complaint, the person that was doing the violence will probably walk free of the situation, and we will have conditions to do it again elsewhere, or, you know, with other people.
And it shouldn't be a case of, I don't want to make a formal complaint because I don't want something significant to happen to the individual. Well, if it's real and you have suffered, that complaint is essential to stop that happening to somebody else.
Exactly. And lately, if you really don't feel comfortable to do no contacting with us in any way, either formally or informally, about whatever you have seen or you have gone through, we also suggest you to go to Gracie Barra headquarters, like the website, as Professor mentioned before. The QR codes are on the dressing rooms, and you can do the complaint on their website, and they're gonna check on us. You know, they're gonna come and review what's going on.
Yep. Safeguarding is everyone's job, coaches, parents, and teammates here at the Academy. You've got to care and you've got to hold our community to the highest standard, really. And that's why we set that high standard, so that others need to achieve it.
Yes, guys. So we are also going to leave down here on the description of this episode some of the resources for you to make your own research, your own reading. And we are going to drop like the links and, for you to do the complaints in case you want to.
Yes, they will be there. They will both be clearly on our YouTube, but we'll have that as well elsewhere. We'll go tagged off for when we send this around to everybody for their WhatsApp as well. Let's go towards sport specifically. Why can sport attract predatory behaviour? Why does sport attract? Why can sport attract this sort of predatory behaviour, this predatory individual?
Well, I think there are some points that we need to mention here, and the first one is the power dynamics. So in sport, coaches and instructors, they hold authority. So they end up leading sessions, they set standards, and often they gatekeep progression. So when your performance depends on that person's approval, it can create a huge power imbalance, especially for children, women, or professional athletes striving to advance. So power dynamics.
Yeah. Second is group consciousness versus individual consciousness. Team builds strong identities to chase shared goals. That's great for performance, but it can sideline individual well-being. People may go along with the group and stop questioning things that feel off. This is safeguarding, but this happens all over every industry, as you know. Groupthink is incredibly negative towards progress because you follow the herd.
Exactly.
You don't want to be outside the tribe.
And you also don't feel like you should be that person that is like, oh, this stuff happened, I don't feel comfortable with it. When like everybody else kind of needs the things to be comfortable. Like, oh, we are so close to this specific competition. I cannot say that this stuff happened just a few days before my whole team is going to travel to another country to compete.
Yep.
So I feel like that the feeling is that it's not just you that is like dealing with a lot. It ends up feeling like if you say something, that's going to generate a big thing for everybody else. Yeah. And then I guess people just get more worried about how they're going to be perceived.
Ostracized.
Yes, excluded or just ignored or like go through the judgment.
It becomes blame then. It's a scapegoat.
Scapegoat.
Yeah.
The third aspect, I think, is the physical spaces itself, because on the gym, for example, we have changing rooms, we have like places that are not assisted all the time, like by the team. And
areas where CCTV can't go for legal reasons as well.
Yeah, and we can also mention like the context where you have to take a whole team for a competition and then how things are gonna go there. Sometimes you need to sleep over that city because the competition lasts more than one day. So the hotels can end up being like an environment where you also don't have the same amount of surveillance from the responsibles, So all of these things, like these are all things that create like any space, any context of semi-private settling can be misused. And that's why we need to have very clear rules about how things should be handled, So an example, all the safeguard courses that we do, they always tell us that an instructor should never be alone with a child. So the transparency ends up protecting everyone, right? So here, when we need to receive someone for private or anything like that, we always have two people of our team to make sure that like this child's not going to be alone.
Yep. And when it comes to adults, it's a similar thing in that we aren't alone in anywhere without any coverage with an adult. So no changing rooms or anything like that, no toilets. So culture plus our clear boundaries will beat the secrecy every time. So that's what we're building here, is the right culture, putting the right boundaries in place to ensure that this sort of stuff can't start to grow and then can't spread through what we do here. And we as individuals aren't worried about having that difficult conversation with an individual should it be necessary to do so. And I think that's one massive plus that we have over lots of other people we know in the industry.
And Tom, under your perspective, how can we help, like, or parents can help their children or like other adult members to notice when something is off?
Observation and presence. You know your child, what their interests are, friends, teachers, typical mood. Behaviour changes will speak very loudly. If you have a happy-go-lucky child who's always running up and down, is full of joy, and returns from any sort of sporting or social activity and isn't, that's kind of a warning sign. It should be treated as like a cry for help.
Yeah, I also like adapting that for adults. I think you also need to pay attention on how you're feeling. Because if you've been to practice and then you have some sort of interaction that later on made you be thinking a lot about that and feeling uncomfortable, it's probably because something for you was not right.
Yeah,
so you need to assess that, understand why you felt uncomfortable, what exactly made you feel uncomfortable, what could have been different.
And it's important when you interrogate that, and if you find that it is because something was off and you want to report it, that you can. You don't think because the situation has passed, it's not relevant anymore. It doesn't need to happen at that time for you to make a report. It can happen after it, once you've gone through the process of interrogating those feelings. So education as well. Give kids language for body parts, boundaries and healthy behaviours. We do a lot of good work here with, I know we run the curriculum, we also empower the kids to know when somebody's invading their boundaries, pushing their personal space, and how they're supposed to react about it as well.
Yes.
Give them that. So if there is a situation that happens, we use the sweet shops a lot. That if somebody, an adult, potentially somebody they know, invades their personal space and they're loud and vocal about it, then yeah, parents then take that very seriously, because that is a situation that they need to get hold of, report, etc.
And I think that education is very connected to the next point, which is like an open communication. So that's something that we always try to keep on the classes. So if you see that something is going on, like when a kid ends up like hugging another kid without asking, this kind of stuff during the class,
touching,
then we need to stop the regular progression of the class and really talk about that and take that chance as an opportunity to keep the communication open and educate them on why that's inappropriate for the jiu-jitsu context. And I think that for parents it's crucial to build a relationship with their children where the children feel safe enough to share thoughts and feelings without any judgment. So the hard conversations about like boundaries, safety, and or any kind of uncomfortable topics, they are the ones that you must have, you know. Avoiding them is not going to protect your children, your child, and the presence, the listening that you offer to your children, that is going to be the thing that can make a huge difference on how they're going to navigate the world and deal with, like, you know, possible threats and how to prevent them.
Sort of like the words I'm fine, I'm okay can be heard to be I'm fine, I'm okay, but if the body language is totally off, then that's not really quite right, is it? You can, as adults, we can see when somebody is not okay regardless of what they're saying, because their body language is telling a totally different story. That's one thing that people aren't very good at hiding, is how they look when they say certain things.
And how they behave. So the words, they can hide things, but the behavior will always tell us the truth.
These are really simple, useful prompts that can be tried and used at home. It's like if something at training or anything feels weird or uncomfortable, that they should always be able to come and tell their parents or their guardian. Like if it's your body, it's your rules. You can say no. We say that for the adults as well, but it's the same for the kids. They say no, they can switch partners, they can ask coach or get a volunteer to come and speak to coach or professor so they can change up who they're with. If they don't like their training partner constantly touching them, they have the right to tell them no.
Exactly. I feel like this is also very important to comprehend. Like, I think it demands from the instructors some sensitivity to also be able to see situations before they happen. So for example, if you already know like one of your children struggles a lot when someone like makes loud noises around them and this kind of stuff, you will try to put this kid on the side of the dojo where they're going to be less exposed to sound, you know, where they will be able to like be more safe, be more comfortable, not feel overwhelmed. And also we need to assess, because like sometimes the children say that they want to go with someone else, it's because they are afraid to being beaten by them.
There is that point as well.
The ego aspect of it.
There is still the ego aspect.
Yeah, so if it's an ego aspect, we will try to push things to be different. But in case it's really a matter of like, no, this kid and my kid, they really don't vibe together. They are not good influence for each other. Yeah. So let's try to keep them separate. Yeah.
Conversations open with your child, but then open conversations with us about what we can do to support and best meet the needs of your child and give them the best jiu-jitsu that they can, best experience they can as well. So if something happens, what should family members and guardians do, really?
First of all, I think they need to support their child however the child needs. So that could be like, that could mean changing the club, the gym that the kid is currently practicing. So
this is about
everything, yes, any kind of
social
activity. Yes. Another way that maybe the kids need some support is maybe having a professional help from a therapist, you know, to process whatever happened. And if the goal is the full recovery, emotionally and practically, it might take some time, some patience, you know, a lot of like wisdom to deal with the situation.
Yeah, and also caregivers need to look after themselves too. They need support, stay steady and present. If you're unwell, you're not going to be in the best state to help your child. If you're well, you can give the child the best support possible.
And again, we are going to go back to the other point that we have spoken before, which is reported. So you can use a formal complaint process. We are going to leave our specific one down below. But you can also speak directly to the coach or the safeguarding lead of the club, the gym, whatever your kid is doing, their extracurricular activity. If it's really necessary, you should definitely escalate to the police. Yeah. If it's a case of like child abuse, you know, anything that involves like sexual harassment, that's the kind of stuff that we should take to the police. And contact the Gracie Barra headquarters in case you need to.
Yeah.
I would also add that like reading and searching more about these topics can give you a lot of extra resources, because we have like crisis lines where you can call numbers. They can also give you some advice on how to handle the situation. You can like open your heart, you know. But don't be silent about whatever happened, because the silence is not going to protect us.
No, it's not. If you're silent and you do see a situation, an issue, and you remove your child from it, or you carry on, but then there's a likelihood that other children are going to be hurt as a result of it. So.
Yeah, I think that just another point regarding this reporting the situation that is very necessary is, if something happened, you are still not sure if you want to report it or no, you should write down the day that it happened, approximate time. Like you should write down what you remember, you know, because with time you're probably going to forget some details that could be crucial for the unraveling of your report.
Yeah, voice note it is really useful, and then you can write it down at a later date if you don't feel comfortable.
Yes, and now let's go for the next topic. That's it, exactly our expectations of the members in our community.
How we expect adults
in our gym.
Yeah. So with clear boundaries at all times, there's no one-to-one isolation with children. That just doesn't happen. That was made. We make sure we do the best we can with what we have in terms of the changing rooms and the crossover in our classes, but should it be a case of a single child and a single adult in a changing room, that doesn't happen unless that child is with a parent or with a guardian or with another coach or other coaches as well. We have an open door, visible space here at the Academy, so we ensure that if our child is alone, that they have eye contact with their guardian, their parent, whoever else, if they're in there. And we ensure, a big thing here is that our changing rooms are male changing rooms for males, female changing rooms for females. And if people aren't comfortable with their daughter, if they're with their dad in the change room, they can change in the shower room, and the same if it's with a mum and her son. If they are uncomfortable, there is the option of another space for them to change in as well.
Or they can come here ready to practice, you know?
Practice, yeah.
Like they get ready at their house, they come with a jacket, take out the jacket and jump in the mats.
If it's raining and it's muddy outside, we do not advocate that.
Yeah. And I also think that is very important for the parents. Like, if you can be as present as possible. We love when you're here to watch the classes, because then we know that you are present for them. You know what's going on, and sometimes we don't see everything that happens, so you can always talk to us.
Yes, yeah, that's
if you see something that we didn't.
Open communication is really key. We will listen and respectfully listen. We're not going to be degrading. We'll hear what you're saying and we'll act on it as necessary. We are not going to poo-poo you away. The phrase escapes me. We're not going to...
Just carry you away.
Yeah. We will listen to what you're saying, ultimately. We will hear the information you're giving to us and act accordingly as necessary.
Yeah, we also recommend everybody to have this idea of consent. So training with consent, you know? So we always try to explain the drills before we actually do them. We check constantly if the person is all right. Mm-hmm. And we adjust if someone says that they are not comfortable, you know, with whatever we need to show, to explain, or whatever the situation is.
Yeah.
And we always try to be modeling the culture, being examples, you know, like intervene when it's necessary. And we always have a preventive way of dealing with stuff. So that's why it's so important to talk about like consent, personal boundaries, you know. And we also try to do repairs to prevent the bigger problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Students, kids and adults, you are allowed to set boundaries, very simply. If something doesn't feel right, somebody is invading your space, you can say no. That kids, like we've said earlier on, stay away. Our loud voices. If it's adults, if it's other kids that are constantly touching you, you are allowed to use your voice to be vocal. We do not advocate violence against the other individual. It's the use of voice only. Yes. But the same is for our adult members as well.
And I feel like we just don't teach technique. We are kind of giving examples on how to treat people in this specific context of Jiu-Jitsu.
Jiu-Jitsu is not an art to hurt people. It's an art to defend yourself. But it's there as well to treat everybody else who comes into contact with it with respect.
Yeah. And I don't want no one to use Jiu-Jitsu for the wrong, like in wrong ways, in wrong aspects. That's why I'm always thinking about the references that we are gonna settle, you know, the references that we are giving.
Yeah, yeah. So the simple things that can be said. If you want to switch partners, feel free to say you want to switch partners. If you don't feel comfortable saying it to the individual who you've been partnered with, you can say it to the coach and professor, and we will do it silently and respecting you. If anything that you're doing together feels uncomfortable and you don't want to do it anymore, don't carry on doing it. Say it's uncomfortable and I don't want to do it anymore. We say that a lot when some people are first starting out. Jiu-Jitsu is uncomfortable. When you first get on the mats for an intro session, it may be the single most uncomfortable thing you've done ever in your life. And if you're not comfortable with it, we're not going to push you. You can watch to see what it's like, but we're not going to make you do everything that everybody else does. Jiu-Jitsu will teach you to be comfortable in the uncomfortable situations that will help you progress in your life. But that doesn't necessarily mean we'll push you into the situation, so you have to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, like you are allowed to set boundaries, you know. We are figure of authority, we have some authority, but at the same time, like we are no, I was gonna say a bad word. So we are very understanding.
Yes, yeah, we are. It's okay if you want to take some time out and you want to sit out for a bit as well. And it's always okay to say to somebody you don't want to have a role with them, regardless of what level they are, what age they are, who they are. If you're not comfortable, say no.
Yeah, we have like put together a couple of phrases that could help you in case you want to set some boundaries or change something. So the first one is like, you can say, no, thanks, I would like to switch partners, please.
Yeah.
Yes, remember the please. It's nice to be polite.
It is polite. And it doesn't mean because that individual is making you, it does mean that if that individual is making you feel uncomfortable, but it's also if their uniform stinks and you want to train with somebody else.
Or if you feel like they have very long nails that could end up like scratching you and causing you any kind of infection.
Because it's all about keeping you safe. If somebody hasn't trimmed their nails, they may cut you, scratch you. If somebody hasn't washed their gi, their hygiene level may be low and they may be carrying God knows what on their gi. So yeah, you do not have to train with them.
Another phrase you can use is, that makes me uncomfortable. Can we do a different drill?
That could be a very first intro session, and the first experience of mount is very uncomfortable, or close guard is very uncomfortable.
Or side control.
Basically jiu-jitsu.
Basically any dominant jiu-jitsu can be a lot.
Yeah.
In case like another phrase that you can use is, can we keep the door open or move to a busier area?
Okay.
We never know, like if you don't feel comfortable, like if you feel like something is starting to escalate and you are in the changing room with one of your peers, so maybe it's the time to say, hey, can we take this conversation outside? Yeah,
it can be, if you are keeping yourself safe, doesn't need to be in a jiu-jitsu academy, it can be in your workplace.
Exactly.
If you're in a meeting with an individual who you don't feel comfortable being in a room that's got a door shut, you're perfectly within your rights to say, I want to leave the door open.
Or you can also add, like in another context, like I want to speak to my parent, or I want to speak to the professor right now.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can also use that one that is always like, I want to sit out for a minute. I want to have a rest this round.
Yeah. And if you are there is a partner and you're not interested in partnering up with them, and the time is ticking down, you can take an incredibly long time to tie your belt. And that can be just enough so you don't have to roll with that individual if you're not comfortable saying anything to them. But we will probably spot that, and we will probably call you out and ask you why you wouldn't want to train with that individual, because we need to know so we can best meet your needs going forward. Black belts do that all the time though, especially when you're old. Tie your belt for an incredibly long time.
That's true.
It's true.
That's true. With time you're able to tell who is kind of like taking an extra time just because they...
Exhausted. Definitely me. Definitely me at the moment. And always remember that we will back you up. That's what we're here for. If you speak up, you're doing the right thing for yourself and for the team, for the other individuals that may be around you.
Yeah, like the safeguarding thing is shared responsibility, the parents, the coaches, the teammates, the students, you're all part of it. So thank you a lot for helping us to keep the culture healthy.
Basically, we can't do it all by ourselves. We can't be everywhere all the time. We can do what we can do in terms of the parameters and boundaries, but if you see something, talk to us, report it, follow what we've guided.
So I recommend you to check the links, like the extra resources we put down below, the references that we use regarding that survey with the 10,000 adults, they are also right here in the description of this episode. And in case you have any other questions or anything else that you think it's important for the conversation that we didn't touch today, you can drop us a message, you can make a recommendation, and we are going to talk about that in another episode. And
if there is anybody who's not part of this community that you would like to share it with, please do.
Yes, that's it.
Well, thank you very much for joining us in this episode on ChatGBT. We'll see you next time.
Exactly.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.